John Hammett, and I live now at Neenah. Well, I was in high school at the time, and when I and a few other guys decided we wanted to go into service because we didn't want to go into the Army, we wanted to go into the Air Corps. And one of the couple guys wanted to go into the Navy, so. But you had to go to your teachers and get a note saying that you would have completed your courses and you would have graduated anyway, because I had about a few more months to go. And that's how we, then of course, the 5 or 6 of us had to stand up on stage and wish goodbye to everybody. And that's how I talked my parents into letting me go. December 1943. Well, we went to Fort Sheridan, and there you got your clothes, and you got your. We used to laugh. They used to say, "The barber you flip a quarter up in the air, and by the time it comes down, he catches it. You're shaved," and he did strip you. I'll tell you. And from there, we went to St. Petersburg, Florida for basic training. You had to do calisthenics in the morning, and then you had a march up and down on the sand beaches. And sometimes that was kind of tough if you realize walking on the sand for a few miles is not exactly the best thing for you, but you had to do it. And then, of course, in those days, most everybody smoked, so they give you a smoke break. But then, when you were done at the end of your training session, then the sergeant said, "Okay, all I want to do is see you bent over picking up all those butts, and I don't want to find a butt on that sand." So that's what we had to do that. You go to an area where they give you tests. And if you wanted to be a mechanic, or if you wanted to be a radio man, or if you wanted to be some kind of a technician, or and of course everybody goes in the Air Corps wants to be a pilot. Well, you can't all be pilots. So even if you are a brain and you had previous previous flying ability, you still could not get in. So you had to take either gunnery. If that was filled up, then you had to do something radio, or you had to do something else. So that's what we did. You took the test, and then they said, "Okay, you're good enough for this, so you go there." Then we went to, I think it was Daniel Field, Augusta, Georgia. And there you spent some time at quartermaster, where they taught you the forms that you got to fill out, and there's always a lot of forms to fill out. And then you go to school in the area that you're going to do service. If you're going to be on the props, and you go there to school for that, for hydraulics or for gunnery, or so whatever school you get sent to so that you are qualified to handle a job in a regular squadron. Well, it was like quartermaster. So, in other words, if somebody comes in and says, "I got to have this particular part for a prop," then you look it up in your books, and then you say, "Okay, I haven't got that now, but I'll get it for you." The only Christmas I remember when I was in the service was when I was in, I think it was Daniel Field, Augusta, Georgia. Christmas Day, I was standing in the chow line, and it actually snowed for about 15 or 20 minutes. And some of the guys were looking around. They didn't know what that was, because they had never seen snow. And I thought that was pretty good. Yeah, but that's the Christmas I remember mostly. Yeah. From there, then I we went to Warner Robins Field. Then I got to leave. And then you were assigned an area, or it really wasn't a squadron, because you had to be taken from that area to fill in the squadrons that where they had lost or where somebody had retired or something. So, yeah, Warner Robins, that's where I got my first leave. Yeah, the furlough. I think it was 10 days. Well, I think people were pretty nice to the soldiers and the sailors and stuff. Oh, I can't complain about that. They were always pretty good. You didn't get a Pullman where you could sleep, you sleep. Well, when you're in the service, sometimes you can sleep standing up if you have to. Then you worked out of that Warner Robins Field, and you worked with other guys on the life line, and from there, then you went to it's a funny thing, but there were what they call cadre. There were guys that have not been assigned but have completed all their courses. And I was a member of a cadre. So they put us in an area on Warner Robins, and you just stayed there until they came and said, okay, we got a squadron for you. So I think I was there for maybe a month. And we used to go to every chow hall we wanted to see what the menu was. I got into the 81st Service Group and 372nd Service Squadron. We were told that we were going to Seattle. And of course, when you're going to Seattle, you know you're going overseas. But you didn't know if you were going to go the South Pacific or whether you were going to go up to Kamchatka and some of the islands by Alaska. So they issued us wool clothing. So that told you what you were going to do, okay? Well, they sometimes fool you, because when we got to Seattle, we turned all that stuff in and we got suntans. Then we knew we were going to the South Pacific. When we went overseas, we were put on a troop transport. Now, that transport was, in peacetime, was licensed for 500 miles off the coast of North and South America. They called it a banana boat. Well, that's what they did. It handled fruit going back and forth. And it took us, I think it was 37 days to tack back and forth, because the submarines, and what we had was a little a little small torpedo ship that took us across. But that thing could really move. And we stopped at Hawaii, and they let us swim at Waikiki Beach one afternoon. And then it was back on the ship, and that was the end of that. We had one where they put the sirens on, and which would indicate that there's either a sub or something that, and of course that little ship that was escort, boy, that baby would travel back and forth. And it didn't have, these big, like a 55-gallon drum where they drop them and they go down and explode. They had those ready, but they didn't throw any. You have a bunk here and a bunk here and there, all the way to the ceiling. And I was told a long time before we got on board, don't take the top bunk and don't take the bottom bunks. Why? It's hotter than blue blazes up there, and if anybody's sick, you get it. Try and get in the middle. And then another thing they always said was, never volunteer. Well, that's not exactly a true statement, because they came around one day and said, we want volunteers to work with the bakers at night. And I said, I'll take it. So I volunteered. And I had to, with a bunch of other guys, had to scrub the pots and the pans and all the utensils and stuff. But at the end, we had coffee and warm bread with all the butter you wanted to put on it, coffee, cake and stuff. You just ate until you couldn't anymore. And so it was worth it. But then they didn't call you for other duties in the daytime because you had to work at night. So that was the one volunteer job that I really came out smelling like a rose with. And then, of course, we went to Tinian and then Saipan and then Iwo Jima. Our real mission was Iwo Jima. Of course, we didn't know it at the time. But then we went on to Iwo Jima. It didn't really sink in, you know. You could see, when we got there, you could see the battleships and the cruisers, and they had been bombing the living daylights out of all the places on Iwo Jima. And the planes were dropping bombs, and if you know anything about the jelly bombs, when they drop them, they start the fire, and they scorch everything. Oh yeah, they dropped them. They burned everything. You could see Mount Suribachi and where the flag was raised, and you could see the airstrips that they had, and actually they had the CBs there working to repair the airstrips so we could get our planes in, the 51s and the 47s. So there was no green there. I'm telling you, it was blown to bits. And they had what they call it volcanic ash. It's like sand, but it's black. And you could put it on and it wouldn't mark, but it was black, like black sand. And the whole island was like that. First of all, they took us to the area where we were gonna have our tents put up, and you had to have your tents put up, and you had to have your cook shack, and you had to have, well, there's several other buildings you had to have that had to be set up. So most of them we set up. We had to help, yeah, but they had regular guys who knew how to do it. We just helped. Well, that's like what they call a squad tent. You could get, I think, 12 or 14 guys in it. 7 one way and 7 back the other way with your duffel bag. It was a good tent. You could roll it up, oh sure, and get air, oh yeah. Most of the time that's what it was, unless you had rain. And then you slept on the cot, and you had a blanket if you thought you needed it. And then you walked from when you went to your job, you went from there just down the hill a little ways to where they had some Quonset huts set up where they had machine tools, you know, we could repair hydraulics or whatever. We had P-51s strictly, and then there was another squadron of some down a little ways that handled just 47s. I think it's the best ship in the World War II, the finest high altitude fighter you could get.